So I was recently introduced to Rick and Morty. It's an awesome, if demented, show. If it doesn't seem awesome for the first few episodes, I described it as the bare minimum amount of witty. Hang on, it is in fact awesome. You'll find out soon enough, because continuity. But even as a newcomer to the awesomeness of Rick and Morty, now that I'm caught up, there are a bunch of things I'd love to see in Season 3. I mean, there's the obvious, like learning about Beth's mother, and finding out whether evil Morty is actually a super intelligent Morty getting revenge on the Ricks of the multiverse, or whether he's an evil Rick who downloaded his brain into a Morty to avoid suspicion. There's a lot of evidence in that episode for either theory, I think. We may or may not learn about those this season, but obviously we'll find out eventually. More speculatively, though, I'd like to see an episode called The Reckoning, where Morty gets some kind of upgrade, because that's an awesome pun. I want to see Beth get out there and kick some more ass, possibly in a mother-daughter outing with Summer. We know Beth doesn't have her father's array of super genius tropes to back her up, but she is very smart on an ordinary human level, and we've seen some evidence that she inherited some of Rick's flair for improvisation. And I feel like she's going to want to cut loose a bit from her earthbound life now and see the universe a bit. I would love if on some adventure with Rick and Morty, the episode ended with Beth being separated from them and lost, and with some threat so massive and immediate that even Rick has to spend the next episode addressing it instead of finding his daughter. So, the second episode of the arc has Rick and Morty dealing with whatever insane danger it is, with Rick being distracted because Beth's one of the very few people in the multiverse he actually cares about. So, when he finally gets over it and excessively punishes and obliterates whatever the obstacle was, in the third episode, they find Beth in some far-flung reaches of the galaxy, and in the time they were separated, she became the captain of a starship, and doesn't want to go back with Rick and them. She likes it here. This is her job now. Morty loves running around the ship and Wesley crushing it up on the bridge, where his common sense and growing genre savviness make him actually outshine the other crew a number of times, despite his barely functional console skills. But meanwhile, Rick's trying his best not to wreck her ship captaining thing, even though he keeps complaining to the bartender about everything they encounter and how he can easily erase all of these problems. He's trying to be supportive. You know how hard that is for him, right? Eventually, though, we know Rick will wreck everything. The question is how justified it will be when it happens. And finally, I'd like to see an episode where Morty is stuck on his own, gets in serious trouble, and then his nanobots trigger and he transforms into a car. But, as seemed implied in that post-credits scene, he doesn't really control the car. It needs a driver. At which point, Annie from Anatomy Park reveals herself, de-shrinking herself and taking the wheel. What? Morty can talk inside the car, like Kit from Knight Rider, obviously. And as she runs over bad guys with him and drives him through a crazy car chase, they have a conversation where he finds out that Rick hired Annie to watch over him from inside, repair the nanobots, etc. And Morty is mortified that this girl he liked has been watching everything he's done the whole time. Potentially everything, including, Now, there has not been an anatomy park inside him the whole time. Rick and Annie thought about it, but Rick decided against it because he doesn't want the public hanging out and possibly witnessing their adventures and crimes and stuff. But it may be hard to convince Morty that there isn't an anatomy park in there, because this is Rick we're talking about. Now, I mentioned my evil Morty theories earlier, but I actually figured out which one is correct, with, I feel, a high degree of certainty. It involves some spoilers for Season 3, Episode 1, so if you haven't seen it, you should watch it now. Mostly because it's awesome. They played it for like a week for April Fools, so you should be able to find it pretty easily on the internet. possibly even on YouTube. Have you seen Season 3, Episode 1 yet? Yes? Okay, good. Minor but important spoilers start now. The jailbreak episode made it almost certain that Evil Morty is in fact a Rick who brain switched with a Morty. I already suspected that, but this episode's heavy use of brain swapping laid all the groundwork to foreshadow the twist. There were elements of the Evil Morty episode that made it seem like he was a real Morty, particularly when his robot puppet Rick went down so easily, shouting at the swarm of Mortys to do it! But there was some more subtle stuff that seemed to support that he was in fact a Rick. It's much easier to justify his brutality towards so many Mortys. It's slightly easier to explain his being Rick smart, and his Mortys can never defeat a Rick line, but those are all very soft evidence. The multiverse and general craziness of the show can explain all that in numerous ways. But there was an element that was still bothering me, and it's a narrative/story element, which is much stronger meta-evidence than any in-universe technical suppositions could be. And the lingering story element in the episode was, obviously, Doofus Rick. So here's my Evil Morty theory. He started as a Rick, obviously a very powerful one, a top-tier Rick, like our protagonist, Rick. I doubt he started flat-out evil, though this part is pure speculation, but something extra bad happened in his timeline. I would bet, because it's how I would write it, that his Beth died. I guarantee that his Jerry died. He probably killed Jerry himself. But that wouldn't turn Rick super evil, because even your average Rick would hardly give a shit. Because Rick hates himself more than anything, he decided to destroy all the Ricks in the multiverse. I don't know his whole plan and motivation. For all we know, there's some greater threat he's trying to prevent that partially justifies his crusade. That's the kind of thing we expect from this show. But whatever his reasons, he swapped minds with his Morty because the Ricks would never suspect him in that body. Huge advantage. But what makes this theory compact? What makes me think that any of this is conclusive or interesting? Doofus Rick is his Morty. Rick's brain swap technique is a swap. He doesn't delete or overwrite the brain. He switches places. That was made very clear in the jailbreak, though he usually uses the element of surprise to shoot the body that he just abandoned, killing the one person who knows that the mind switch happened. Why was Doofus Rick even in the episode? For some cheap poop-eating jokes? He was way too prominent. There was way too much focus on him. It was weird. It stood out, like he's important. The council had to give him a lame Morty because he never had kids. Of course he didn't have kids. He's a kid stranded in his grandpa's old-ass body. He's probably not looking for or getting a lot of action. Then, look at his connection to Jerry. Why does he care so much about Jerry? The episode implies it's because he's not as smart as the other Ricks, he's not as capable, and because of that he feels a kinship with the dumb guy. Plausible. But he's also nice. It's not just that being less smart makes Rick less of a jerk. It's because he's a Morty in a Rick's body. A Morty whose dad, whose own Jerry, died somehow, and he's taking this rare opportunity to connect and bond with his dad because he misses him. His caring about Jerry's feelings, the building Lego together, the instinctive way Jerry likes him back, that's not just a dumb guy likes dumb guy thing. Why was Doofus Rick standing in the rain across the street at the end? That's not just a dumb guy likes dumb guy thing. I don't believe that part in particular was just a repetition of the dumb guy's gag. That's a son in a grown-up body too terrified to defy his Evil Morty Rick by revealing himself, but longing for that relationship to his father. Evil Morty is the evilest Rick, and Doofus Rick is his mind-swapped Morty. Am I right? Probably. Will it be revealed in Season 3? That's a tough one. Depends how many seasons they plan to draw out the quest for the Szechuan sauce.
And if you'd like some D&D distilled down to its awesome essence, check out the illustrated Tales from My D&D campaign.